Good morning, listeners. You are listening to WVLP LP 98.3 Valparaiso. My name is Tracy Traut, and along with Kathy Sipple.
Hi, I'm Kathy Sipple.
We are here, and we have some big changes afoot. So the first thing we'd like to announce is that we are changing the name of Traut Line to Socially Speaking. And Kathy Sipple is going to join me every morning on the air, so we're really excited about this.
That's every Monday morning,
Every
right?
Monday morning, yes, sorry.
Okay, good.
Right.
As much as I love this.
Yeah, oops. So,
Good.
Traut Line's going to be shifting around to Socially Speaking. We're going to be changing the Facebook page and, of course, our email address. So I'd like to remind everyone that Socially Speaking is underwritten by Uptown Cafe. Uptown Cafe is an eco-responsible specialty coffee, tea, and soda bar with a dynamic food menu set in a fusion of modern and classic design. We encourage all of you to visit our friends at Uptown Cafe, and we thank them for their continued underwriting support. Also, this morning, I'd like to mention that, I'm not sure she's on mic, but Dana, she's not, but Dana is back this morning to do a little catch up with us and do a little engineering. So even though you're not on mic, welcome back, Dana. So it's always good to have her here. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Kathy Sipple, who is now my co-host here. Remember, guys, Socially Speaking, and she's going to introduce our guest and our topic today.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Tracy. It means a lot. Again, my name is Kathy Sipple, and I was Tracy's guest last week. And we thought that it went so well that we decided just to extend the party and
absolutely
had a little powwow on Friday and made it official. So, Socially Speaking, we're not clearly defining what that will be about, but social justice, social media, social opportunities in Northwest Indiana. I think Tracy and I have, different areas of interest, but we've got enough overlap that we're sure to find lots of interesting guests to help us fill this space. So today's guest is Sandy Rodriguez, and a very dear friend of mine that I've gotten to meet from some green activities that I'm involved in. Sandy was one of our speakers at Green Drinks, which is a really neat monthly meeting, if I can put a little plug for Green Drinks. But Sandy is the market manager at the Miller Beach Farmers Market in Miller, and is also the economic and community development, how do I want to say this, cooperative extension. Please say it, Sandy. It's a long, long title.
Right.
I've had it before, but you're the local food specialist with the Purdue Cooperative Extension.
Yes, in Porter County.
In Porter County.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And so you have been tasked with working on local food issues in Porter County. I know I attended an event that you coordinated back in, what was that, March? Okay, at the Expo Center, and it was a fabulous event. Tell us a little bit about that. It was like bringing together suppliers and farmers and restaurateurs. Can you give us a recap of what you did at that event and some things that have happened since then?
Sure. Well, the reason that I was hired at Purdue was I had met with Chris Parker the previous year and started becoming, because of starting the farmers market, started to become more aware of the issues surrounding what does it take for a farmer to get to market, where are the farmers in Northwest Indiana, and what's going on with that. And Chris had done some really great work. She had organized a local foods expo back in 2007 where some of the producers participated in that, and it was a really big success. And after that, they had organized some meetings, but that group disbanded. So I came in September of 2010, and at the same time, NERPC had gotten some funding to do a local food system study of the three-county area.
Headed up by Kevin Garcia?
Right,
okay.
Right. I'm not talking about the meeting, but I'll get there. the meeting that we held.
This is how we roll, socially speaking, so you're doing just fine, yeah.
Right. I'm going to be off topic or tangential, whatever.
You're right on track. That's very good.
For us, Sandy?
I like that.
That is on track.
It's all connected. That's what
I spend my life being tangential.
Oh, I'm in the right group over here. I love it. I love it. Yes.
Okay, so this is good. It's all coming together. So tell us what happened then.
So NERPC started having meetings, and they brought some stakeholders together based on the work that Chris had done, and starting to sort of expand this network of people who are interested in local food issues.
Can I pipe in for 1 second?
Sure.
I found that some people don't know the acronym NERPC. I sort of think that they would, but it's the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission. Is that correct?
Right,
okay.
Right,
gotcha.
Yeah. And they hadn't really been involved in any of those issues, so the grant was a good opportunity to start mobilizing. And Kevin had done his master's thesis on an urban agriculture project in Chicago, and had a real love and passion for that. So he picked up that ball, and was joined by Beth Schrader, who's really talented, and they both did a wonderful job of organizing the meetings and structuring the study and doing some research around these issues. So that has been going on, and then the county. So I came in there in September, and Chris had started a local foods newsletter, so I was taking that over while she was on maternity leave. And then Annetta Jones, who is the wonderful county extension director at Porter County, she knew some food service directors at some schools, and so we coordinated a presentation to those ladies, and they were really interested and had actually been doing some work already, reaching out to some local orchards and producers. But of course, with the schools, there's a lot of issues because they need such quantity and they need the standards, and so. But they were real interested in talking to farmers and seeing how they could sort of move that ball along. So that's kind of where the start of the idea of another meeting came. And I'm on this listserv that comes out of Tufts University. It's called Community Food, or ComFood. And it's really great for a listserv that is national and really collects a lot of information of what's being done in other communities and other areas of the country. And so it can be overwhelming, one of those like, oh my God, I've got 100,000 emails in my basket. But so starting to look, for me, being somewhat sort of new to all of the issues, which we all are as we start learning like what's happening to our food system. I think everybody has a stake in it, and to find out more what we can do to sort of change that hierarchy.
That's a great point, actually, and I maybe wish I would have led with that, but why should we care about local food? I want to know more about, what happened from the meeting, and we'll definitely get back to that point with our tangential, connections that we make. But what are some of the reasons? I mean, I would think lower dependence on fossil fuel, certainly, if it's a shorter commute for your food to get to your table? Yes. Well,
that's a big one. Of course, like considering these situations, whether you believe or not in peak oil, but that there is a reduction of the reserves, and I think that's a big issue. That will be a big issue for everybody in terms of prices and the impact that will have on food and growing food and harvesting it and transporting it. So I think the first thing that they say is the average mileage of food that to get to your plate is like 1,500 to 1,700 miles. And I'm not really a statistics person, but really when you look at the Midwest and this incredible growing capacity, you have to wonder, like, how did we get so dependent on food from so far away when we can grow all of this incredible food here? So,
is it people trying to eat out of season that are driving that, or just consumer demand, do you think?
Why we're importing so much and getting it from so far away? I think it was the drive, historically speaking, Earl Butts and the whole agricultural trends toward becoming huge factory farms rather than the small family farm wasn't able to survive anymore. And then, of course, moving, the commodity crops kind of just took over our land because that was where,
It's more of like a monoculture kind of thing?
Right. Okay. corn and soybeans, you know, just replaced vegetable production. So, yeah, that's kind of that's one reason. I mean, local food also supports local farm families. And, you know, if looking at this 3-county area, you know, I started looking at, well, what farm families are really functioning. And there's only, you know, a couple in Lake County and a little bit more in Porter County. But LaPorte still, you can really see in LaPorte that, that it's still vibrant. Although from the NERPC study, they did say that only 0.1% of the land in the 3-county area is used for fruit and vegetable production.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing to me. When you drive around, that just doesn't feel like what I see. So that's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, when I came to, I mean, I grew up in the region, but I still, you know, you ride around and you see farmland. So it really is shocking. Like, we're not really producing food for ourselves that much anymore. And we have some of the richest soil and, well, more Illinois, and this soil is really sandy, but actually sandy soil is very good for vegetable crops.
You're probably a little partial to sandy. Being named Sandy seems appropriate.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and I started thinking about today's talk with a couple of ideas in mind. Is just, you know, some of the things that you're doing with policy in the 3-county-wide area. You know, it's certainly all really interesting. And then on a micro level, I think I get quite a bit out of just planting a tomato plant in my backyard or in a container garden. And I know Tracy has been posting
big deal. My pictures
photos
of my
of
vegetables.
her beautiful tomatoes. She beat me by at least a week with ripened tomatoes.
Oh.
I picked our first bean crop last night. So we had fresh green beans from our yard, which was pretty spectacular. Not for everybody, but for us it was a pretty spectacular moment.
Another key benefit is it just tastes a whole lot better.
Oh,
right?
yum.
Better for you there. You know, and that, when I was thinking about sort of where we're going today, that sort of is what I was driving, is this whole, and we can certainly talk about that sort of as we progress through, but this idea of how are we feeding ourselves? You know, I have a great deal of concern when, you know, and we talked about this, you know, my kids will not eat things that come out of cans. And I said to Kathy, and I go, well, you know, that's what I get for cooking. I mean, you know, but they don't, to them, green beans out of a can or corn that comes out of a can to them, it's limp and it's not a green bean. And it tastes funny to them.
Good for them. That's a great
because that's not really been their experience. And so
you've been feeding these kids homegrown vegetables my goodness.
Farmers market vegetables. When we lived in the city, we didn't have a lot of place to go. But yeah, I mean, even when I lived in the city of Chicago, and yes, I lived in the city, not in Schaumburg, there was tons of places to go where I could get produce. And so that's how I've always fed them. And again, another thing, socioeconomically speaking, I was also able to afford that when I went into, you know, as they like to refer to it as whole paycheck, in the winter to get fresh food.
Right.
But not, and that's the other thing is, how are we teaching people to feed themselves? When you've got a 99-cent meal at McDonald's, and, you know, green beans in the winter are $2.69 a pound. Okay, I don't really know that for sure, but I'm just throwing it out there. That concerns me. And then we got the whole school lunch issue, which school lunches, I hesitate to even use the word lunch, because the food, I understand it's large numbers of people, but it's not a really good lunch.
Well, and it is exciting. Back to the meeting that Sandy was talking about in March, I attended. It wasn't really a key stakeholder, just an interested person that lives in Porter County in northwest Indiana. But I think it was Flint Lake School was actually buying apples from, I want to say it was County Line Orchard, right in Hobart, right on County Line Road. And, you know, they were facing some challenges to get enough apples and the right kinds and this and that and the other thing. But there was some really interesting synergy going on. And these school lunch planners, I don't know what their real job title is, but they really cared about getting these kids great quality produce. And I love to see that collaboration. And I know there was another example of, trying to think of her name now, she's a chef in the Michigan City school system.
Lauren Bridges.
Lauren Bridges.
At the A.K. Smith Technical Career Academy. Yeah, she's doing a fabulous job.
And she teaches a culinary program. Is that correct?
Yes, for teenagers.
That was an interesting collaboration as well, where they were pairing with local farmers to help them harvest and process their crops, because her challenge with teaching kids how to cook is that you've got to have ingredients to work with.
Yes.
I know your son just went through a culinary camp program, right? So that's interesting. And, if you're on a sort of limited budget, you can't just go to Whole Foods or even to a farmer's market and buy them. So they were working in cooperation with the farmers to help them harvest, process, and then serve some of these different foods. And I thought that was great.
Oh, and I think that's where we have to also put a lot of energy is in the culinary programs and really trying to figure out the green bean connection. No, really, I wanted to just share this story because a master gardener came into the office the other day with 4 huge bags of green beans, just giving them away.
Okay, and be on your speed dial next time that happens.
I know, I was just like, oh, wow, and I was so excited to take them home because there's something also about when you have a lot of it, quantity. And being able to share, it's so wonderful, and that connection with the earth. But that was the first time I really, really went to town with these green beans and made sort of a hot peppers, sesame oil kind of thing with garlic and some breadcrumbs around it. And I mean, it's just really is amazing. And we don't eat that way anymore and I think you do need quantity, to just get you excited about it. Well, what do I do without these? And just side dishes and vegetables, eating vegetables again. So, yeah, the culinary connection, I think, is really, really strong. And Lauren, I just really, kudos go out to her because she has such a passion for it, and she's really able. They created a website and have local farmer links on there, and, yeah, she's really doing some great stuff.
That's great. Very interesting.
You are listening to Socially Speaking with Tracy Traut and Kathy Sipple on WVLP LP 98.3 Valparaiso.
Thanks for that, Tracy. I'm a rookie here, so Tracy is the one that's in charge of the station identification. But
Kathy has a real good radio voice, don't you think?
I know.
I think she's got one of those really...
I think we all kind of do, actually. But, so back to this, Tracy made a great point. How do we feed ourselves? We have this abundance. You've got kids that don't want a limp green bean. We've got all of these different aspects. So I've got containers in my backyard. I happen to have a teeny, tiny little backyard, so I'm not satisfied with that. I got a community garden plot this year, and I felt really fortunate to be in that. It's with the Valpo Parks Department.
Okay.
It's actually their first time having it at the Butterfly Meadows Foundation Park. And I've got a 12 by 12 plot. I used to live on 5 acres and had a 1,000 square foot garden. I didn't have to think very much about how to make that happen efficiently. Now, with a 12 by 12 square foot garden, I have learned about vertical gardening and square foot gardening, and it's so interesting. It's so fun, and it's very productive. But I'm getting into soil. I'm getting into how do we get the most out of the soil and the space that we've got. Is that anything that your local food program has addressed at all?
Well, it's kind of it's interesting in Northwest Indiana because we're not usually dealing with the problem of space because there's so much space. Right. So I've been reading about it online, different urban farming, and they call it spin farming. Okay. It's I forgot what that acronym stands for, but it's in small spaces, how to maximize just exactly what you said. So in cities and real dense urban areas, that of course is a really big issue. But it's in Gary, the issue is there's all of this land. Why aren't we using it? Right. So it's a little bit opposite. But I'm really happy to hear that the community garden plot with the Parks Department is working out.
I think it worked very well. And they had a master gardener that came out to meet with us before anybody planted, and just to give us some little tips. And I thought I knew what I was doing, but I learned a great deal. Really nice to have that support. And also learning from the other gardeners. That was something that I hadn't anticipated. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I have to say, I was a little bit in it for the cucumbers and the zucchini and the tomatoes, you know.
Well, it's always about the food for me. That's exactly why I planted them in my backyard, because it's about the food.
Competitive gardening, though, is what I'm finding in a community garden. It's a whole different vibe than when you just go out to your plot and you say, well, I guess this is when the tomatoes come.
Right.
You know, when you see your neighbor's tomatoes came before yours, or the other person's zucchini's bigger, you know, it tends to bring up some discussions, like, what did you do? How did you do that? You know, and you see really innovative things going on.
People would be frightened if they looked in our garden now, because we kind of just haphazardly dug out this spot, and the tomato plants are like all over, and they're getting into the grasses. And we killed our cilantro because we didn't know what we were doing. And, you know,
whatever works. You know? It's just like start somewhere. Start somewhere. But in any case, you know, I think there's the what are you doing in your backyard, which may or may not be a big backyard. I really like how this is going with the community gardens, because I think that gives people that don't have a place to physically do it a place to, you know, go and
we should talk about your pool idea.
Yeah, I decided to try container gardening on a very experimental level and a very cheap level, because I did want to see, you know, could you do this affordably? And you know, I don't know if you guys know the website called freecycle.org, but it's kind of like Craigslist, only with free things that you can list to give away, or you can say what you're looking for. And I just said I'm looking for, you know, really crummy, beat-up kiddie pool, hard-sided, you know, plastic kiddie pool. And lo and behold, someone dropped them off for me. I got 2 of them. You can get free compost from the city or the county. And then I started my own worm bin not too long ago that I also got from the county. It means theworld.org is the Porter County Waste Reduction site. And they do, I got to put in a plug for them. I got a rain barrel through their program, and they also did a worm composting workshop, which, you know, was great. So in any case, you know, I'm watering with my free water that is harvested from my roof, stays in my rain barrel. I got, you know, free compost, either benefit of my own worms or from the county. And then just a couple seed packages. So I'm doing just a lettuce garden on my driveway because I don't have yard. And so far, so good. I'm pretty happy with it. So how sustainable would that be? It seems like that would be pretty...
That's excellent. Using whatever resources that you have. I love that it's free and recycled. And
I can probably afford to buy a kiddie pool, but just as a matter of principle, I didn't want to.
Well, it's part of the process.
Part of the process, yeah, just to see, you know, could other people go and do that?
How are we going to reuse?
Right. Anyway, talk about tangential. That was my long tangential rant, but I do love it.
But reuse and recycle is like so important. I am really horrified by the amount of trash I throw out. I saw that woman who like reduced her plastic use and has like one little bag for a whole year. I'm like, how does she do that? And I get just more and more frustrated about that every day. Like, why aren't we reusing and recycling more? So,
but at least you are frustrated. At least you're aware enough to be frustrated, so I applaud you for that. Like, I have to say, I've got a website that I created to help people understand, you know, where am I on the cycle and how can I get better, and it's, if you don't mind, I'm going to say it, it's 219greenconnect.com. It's not fully functional yet, but one of the main things that you can go and do there is a carbon footprint calculator. And I thought I was pretty green. I thought I was really working hard at reducing my carbon footprint. I was a little horrified to find out after, you know, what I thought was a pretty intense campaign to reduce my carbon footprint that I was average. Like, wow, all those changes and I'm now average? Oh my gosh. But in a way, it frustrated me enough to take it to the next level. So, you know, I think if you're feeling frustrated, really that's good.
That's the start.
You're awake.
Right.
You're aware. So what kinds of things do you do? I mean, you're in a pretty public way promoting local food, both as a market manager. What kind of tips can you give us for ways that we could either incorporate fresh food from farmers markets or just any tips?
Well, first of all, I also applaud you for using the compost and the mulch that the city is offering. I have to say, like, I never thought a big pile of mulch would make me so happy. Like, I am crazy about mulch.
I am too.
I love those piles of wood chips,
Yep.
and because that's what makes soil, 75% carbon and 25% nitrogen. And so we have so much sand, and that's the best way to do it. And it hasn't. Since I'm not home during the day, there's these guys who, I don't know if they're from NIPSCO or utility companies or whatever, who are chopping the trees down and are doing this for people in our neighborhood, and it's just wonderful. So I applaud those guys and say, let's do that, more of that. Whenever they're cutting trees down, that's a resource.
Right.
That mulch is a real big resource for everybody doing gardens.
So, Sandy, are you telling me that this push that I've been having to stop slugging mulch, and my husband is fighting me, that actually he's right and that mulch is better for my yard than stones?
Absolutely, if you want to build some soil.
Some moisture.
All right.
Yeah.
Guess I'm going to be slinging mulch now.
But stones are probably still better than grass, I would think, from your water.
Well, it depends what purpose you're using them
we don't
for.
use plastic things on our drain spouts. We have a series of natural rock things that we've made underneath our downspouts. So it runs over rocks instead of one of those plastic things, but then it goes into something else.
Like a dry stream bed kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know what he concocted back there. But I've been
very thoughtful and
intentional. Pushing to get away from mulch, but I guess now Sandy has tripped my consciousness, so I will never be able to make the switch to stone. As long as it's better for the environment, I'm happy.
It's absolutely good.
A really
right.
interesting documentary, I think it was called Dirt, the movie. Did you happen to see it? I mean, you would think, why a movie about dirt? But it was really fascinating. I mean, the microbes and everything that's going on in the soil level. I mean, once you're aware of that, it's hard not to be fascinated. But, the vegetables that you raise can only really be as good as your soil. Right? Because I think a lot of people, when they fertilize with commercial fertilizer, they only have, and I'm not going to remember this correctly, I think potassium, nitrogen
and phosphorus.
That's it. It's like
NPK.
NPK. And there are, I think, something like 22 different minerals and nutrients that your soil actually needs to give you the complete array of nutrients to be passed into your food. If it's not in your soil, it can't really get into the food very easily.
I just want to take a moment and remind you that you are listening to Socially Speaking on WVLP LP 98.3, Valparaiso, Indiana. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tracy Traut.
And I'm Kathy Sipple.
And I'm Sandy Rodriguez.
What could be more social than food, really?
Right. Right. But I want to go back to this whole soil talk, because I think sometimes people get overwhelmed. They're like, I'd like to put some vegetables in, or I would like to do a community garden plot. And then you get in the middle of this and you're like, maybe I shouldn't because I don't know. And I'll use us as examples. I mean, Fred is way more into the yard kind of thing than I am. And so when we decided to do this, I mean, he had me slug in bags of, we had to go to the city and we got the compost. And then we were slugging manure and peat moss and
a lot of slugging going on.
And then it all had to be worked in there. And I'm thinking to myself, could we get a tiller? No, he says. You got to keep shoveling. But I think that if you don't know and then you put these plants in, you might get discouraged. So maybe we should talk a little bit about, because you guys are way ahead of me in this. I'm just excited because I got 5 tomatoes.
Like darn good tomatoes. I thought I was going to do really well with tomatoes, and you beat me. So, I mean, I'll let Sandy answer. She's the expert.
Well, I'm not an expert. I just got my Master Gardener certificate, so
expert.
I'm still an intern in that too, but really the beautiful thing about growing is it really happens so easily, and we don't really need a lot of intervention. I mean, just to get started and put a seed in and watch the miracle of growth and watch a little seedling emerge and get into it, just on whatever small level you can is really, really great. So, and I have flowers and fruits and vegetables, and I put in some blackberry bushes and some blueberry bushes. I got the first apple on my very first apple tree this year.
Awesome.
And it's so beautiful. It really is, and it's like I do love it. I love watching it grow, and I love putting time into it, and it's a very spiritual and renewing kind of thing to do.
Exactly.
So I can't, and even if it's done in containers or boxes, I mean, all of that contributes to really reducing our carbon and making our connection to these miracles that of real beauty and sustenance that we're given in this world, and just to nurture that is it's like a lovely thing. And I fear for the kids who are getting really far away from that.
Right.
That's why I think it is so important to keep this topic and to keep all of this work, forefront. And I have to just say this is like, I believe that local food, the reason that I'm getting so passionate about it is because, like you said, it's a social thing, but it's a spiritual thing. It's something that we all love and that we need in our lives, and it's always a celebration, really. But that's not the way that we're eating now.
Right.
No.
To grab like a burger from a drive-through is really just an abomination, really,
It's about as disconnected as you can be from what is this? This was once a cow, or was it? We're not really sure. In some of those drive-through things, or we were talking about cheese before. The abomination that is American cheese.
Right.
Yeah. I've actually had one little foray into the world of cheese making. It did not go particularly well, but I'd like to try it again. It wasn't
but
that
even
hard.
there are, you brought up there aren't that many local cheese makers, but doesn't, I thought there were a couple one big farm that actually makes their own cheese, and it's pretty good and pretty.
There's Fair Oaks Farm.
Yeah, I think that's
okay. Yeah, that's a big operation.
Yes, it is.
They're doing some amazing things too there, besides making the cheese and all of that.
But the whole way they reuse certain things and drive their energy, I think it was pretty amazing.
The anaerobic digester, reusing the cow poo.
Yeah, right.
But see, that's what, don't you think America, like, we've wasted all of our waste.
Right.
Like, we treat it as waste when it's really, that has to be a whole big paradigm shift. We have to look at waste in new ways.
And they're making electricity off of cow poop.
Right.
Exactly.
I think that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And I love these, I'm seeing more and more permaculture systems, aquaculture systems that look at the entire life cycle of each of the participants. Or there are these chicken tractors that I've seen. I so wish I could have chickens, but I'm downtown in Valpo. I can't do it. But they move these little fenced pens around, and the chickens, they emit chicken poop, as chickens will do, that is very nitrogen rich, and then you cycle that with some other farm animals. They come through, and the chickens eat the bugs, this eats the that, and it's a whole cycle that can be very beautiful and self-sustaining.
Well, to me, it's the way, before the Industrial Revolution, I think it's a lot of the way we used to do things. Really.
Right. I talk to so many older people that say, we weren't green in our day. We just had common sense.
Well, yeah. I think that's just what they did.
Right. But unfortunately, we do need some way showers. We do need some people to kind of show us how to get back to that. Because when you grew up on Mickey D's and other drive-through or, meal in a box kind of thing, and you know what? I've enjoyed my share of those things.
Right.
And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here.
Well, we all have.
Right.
But to feel top-notch in my own body and get the nutrients that we need, I think we can all agree we need to go a little different way.
Well, and I think sometimes it's your environment, so it's what you're used to. I have a very good friend when she moved here into my neighborhood, and they've since moved on to Dallas, but they are from Spain. And one of the things she said to me when she moved here, she said, there are a lot of food that comes in boxes here. And I was like,
yeah, well, that's how food. Yeah, that's what.
And then she said, I need to buy my fresh fish and my blah blah blah. And she's asking me where she goes to get all these things, and I'm like, ooh.
Excellent
See,
question.
here,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of in the middle of the country. But
even though we've got a Great Lake nearby.
it was not a criticism. It was an observation. And
Right.
until she said that to me,
You don't think about it.
I didn't think about it. And then I'm standing in the store one day, and I was like, whoa, everything comes in a box. I mean, seriously, Thai food in a box. But you can buy Thai food in a box and nothing. And I think that's just, when you say our kids are stepping away, that's what they're stepping away from.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, are there any initiatives going on, particularly in Gary or some areas that might be more prone to being food deserts? I mean, that's a term I've heard where you just don't have even the food in a box. You don't have the fresh food, in grocery stores that you can get to very easily. It seems to me I've been hearing more and more about urban land use and Northwest Indiana being a model, actually. I think you posted that last week.
Oh, there was for reuse, land reuse.
Land reuse.
It's like not urban agriculture hasn't quite caught on, but there have been
the economic development.
Right, more for that. And I don't even know where to begin with talking about Gary, because there really is such a huge difference between Gary and the rest of Northwest Indiana, that urban corridor. So really looking at the problems that those communities face, like the underserved communities and the low-income communities versus, the rest of Northwest Indiana, there's a really big divide. So that's a huge challenge. How do we introduce the people in those communities to better practices like the gardening? It's very much influenced by income. What we can afford to eat. People who have money aren't really worried about necessarily where their food comes from, because they feel there's all kinds of reasons for that. But when you are on a limited budget and trying to feed a family, I don't know how these women are doing it, really. There's not, the fresh stuff and eating healthy really takes an income. You have to have a good income to do that. So I'm getting off on a tangent. What's happening in Gary? There is, I'm working with one Christ United Methodist Church. They have a whole city block in Gary, and we're trying to get support and form an organization to create an urban farm there.
That's great.
And a learning center. We need a learning center in Northwest Indiana for all of these things, because working through Extension, I'm really exposed to the programs that Extension offers, but it just doesn't reach up into the northern areas, for one thing, and they haven't quite adapted. They're using more traditional rural models, and that's the kind of thing they support, where all of the urban agriculture stuff seems to be coming from the cities. It's not being sort of initiated by the land-grant universities necessarily. So I think an urban farm and learning center somewhere in Northwest Indiana would be fabulous, and that might be happening. And County Line Orchards has been doing this initiative with community gardens.
NWI.com, I think it's called.
Right, yeah.
They have maybe a dozen or more community gardens that they've implemented.
They supported, and one at and what's in Porter County that's exciting too is Walter Lankos and the Porter County Park system. The Sunset Hill Farm
they've got a community garden there,
they started that, and they have a mandate to share agricultural knowledge with the community. So he's looking forward to getting chickens, I think.
Wow,
I know they have goats there.
I saw goats on Facebook the other day. They were very cute.
And I think that's a marvelous way for the community to have exposure. So I just can't, boy.
And they seem they're on a mission to actually have people volunteer, and not so much like the community garden I'm in, where it's you've got your 12 by 12 spot. It does seem truly like community, that you go, you pitch in, you donate seeds and plants, and the mission is to grow food for people who who need it, I believe. I don't know exactly the rules of the game.
He doesn't really have a
rules.
mission yet, and he's looking for people to sort of come in and contribute. They talked about a CSA possibly. I mean, they really have a lot of land there, and they're willing to grow all these programs, but that's where you really need community and volunteer support. So
one of the last green drinks, there was a gentleman from the Northwest Indiana Food Bank, and they were talking about some of their collaboration between the food bank and some of the community gardens, and that's very exciting. That just makes a lot of sense to me, to get the people who can grow it to work together with the people who need it. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this particular example, but I believe it was Arc Bridges. Do you know about some plot of land that they had in Gary that I think now is being used by...
I know that they had 5 acres that they needed help with, and I remember Ryan sort of saying, "Yeah, we'll help you."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then there's St. Timothy's in Gary, and they have about, I think, a 1 acre site that's connected with the church. So those things are happening. We have a community garden in Miller. We have a couple of them actually. The Temple Israel started one, and then there's a neighborhood sort of block club that does one. So, and we're talking about, I've got some people talking about a co-op, a community farm co-op model.
And how does that look different than some of the other models that we've addressed so far?
Well, this would be where we would actually acquire land or have it donated. And then the members would contribute through finances or through labor.
So they own a share.
Yes.
It's where you're actually owning.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And we'd like to do chickens and goats, of course.
Anything coming for Porter County, or is this a Lake County?
This is in Miller only. So, and I think that's the way to go, is just to get like-minded friends. And if you're interested in any of these things, figure out whose backyard it can go in, or
probably not mine.
Right. That's what my husband said. Not ours either.
In this room, actually. So the goats would probably not be real happy in my backyard. But, well, when you get that model worked out, I hope you'll share it, and would love to promote it, and I'm sure you'll do a great job at it.
Absolutely. I would like to remind you that you are listening to Socially Speaking on WVLP LP 98.3, Valparaiso, Indiana. I'm your co-host, Tracy Traut.
And I'm Kathy Sipple.
And our guest today is...
Sandy Rodriguez.
All right, so you guys mentioned something about NERPC and a meeting, and before...
Right, our tangential departure.
Right, and I'm not trying to be dictatorial, but just
we would like to know how that wraps up.
Right.
So a lot of initiatives, and we've circled back and talked about some of them, the Michigan City Area Schools. What's the name of that program again? With Lauren Bridges?
Oh, she's at the A.K. Smith Technical Careers Center in Michigan City. But yeah, to quickly recap, because there are some efforts that people can get involved in. So at Extension, what we did in March was call a meeting for food service directors, restaurant chefs, and farmers. And it was a very successful. We had probably over, I think, around 70 attendees. And what we really discovered from that meeting is there's a lot more demand than there is supply. So so one of the objectives, sort of a regional objective, or at least, we have to figure out how to make more farmers, and how to make more farmers interested in growing fruits and vegetables. And that's really big. That's something that we have to figure out, both the land grant university, or how to maybe have policy support where it's more profitable for them. So those are real big issues. But I think that there's a real possibility, like with the work that you're doing, Kathy, with social media, that we start trying to figure out how to either get businesses together to support local food initiatives.
Right.
Not only businesses, but hospitals and health organizations.
Sure.
I think that's a really important coalition that we need to start thinking about. And I'll just make a plug, because the Indiana State Department of Health has 2 years ago crafted the Indiana Healthy Weight Initiative.
Okay.
And they've been working on programs and objectives so that they can start getting more people on board with more the health angle and the health and nutrition angle for healthy weight. And just this last month, I was invited to co-chair the local foods group of that initiative for Northwest Indiana. And there's really opportunity here because not a lot of organized work has been done. So it's a chance for Northwest Indiana to sort of get together and build these sort of coalitions. Like sometimes it just takes a conversation.
Right.
But that's also what I love about local food, because it can transcend party lines, I think, and really bring together people to work for a common goal.
Tracy and I were talking about this, it was a local farmer I was talking to about this, and she said, it's interesting that some conservatives think it's a liberal agenda, and in a way I think, what could be more conservative than conserving the land and going back to basics? I'm like, how is that anybody's party line? I mean, that to me is like local jobs. How, who wouldn't want to be behind that?
Yeah.
I don't really understand quite that distinction. But
and that's another thing that gets me really excited about local food is the potential to generate revenue, to generate local jobs, to support the local economy. You can get these ancillary food businesses and startup food businesses going once you have all those green beans or you have all those tomatoes and you're deciding, or you have a flair for creating salsas and sauces or jams and jellies. Like, there's a lot of ways that this can grow. And as part of that Indiana Healthy Weight Initiative, a guy named Ken Meter was invited to do a food system study for the whole state of Indiana.
Wow.
And I really recommend Ken's work. It's at the Crossroads Resource Center, because he is one of the people in the country who's doing sort of documentation of all of those kinds of economic statistics that support why we need to support local farms and eat local. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. That study's supposed to be completed in December or January.
Be on the lookout for that. I hope you'll share that post with me, and I'll certainly pass it along here on Socially Speaking and the other various websites that I curate. So how can people get involved? What would you say are some great resources that we want to make sure listeners know about?
So out of the NERPC work, the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, they are forming a calling it Food SAC, which is Food System Advisory Council, I believe. And so they're looking for participants in that. And we were talking at the last meeting on this past Friday. There is this National Food Day being organized. I think it's October 24th.
Okay.
And, I think NERPC, we're just sort of talking about, there was the idea of a harvest dinner. Maybe in the region or
farm to table type thing.
Yeah. I think one of the issues in Northwest Indiana is there's a lot of separate groups who don't always communicate with each other, and I would hate to see that happen too. So I'm really glad that NERPC sort of has taken up the reins and is organizing something that where people can. There's a central source, and it's not a funded position, so that's another issue, but at least they can, that's what their part of their mandate is to get
focus for right now.
Is to get community together and organize these advisory councils.
So for the advisory council, are they looking for food producers, restaurateurs,
everybody,
average citizens that are interested about what they eat? Anybody would be welcome to attend that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I talked about coordinating maybe a harvest dinner for this October 24th day. Also, if there's any way, we really need involvement of campuses. We need students involved in this too. And there's been a lot of activity. Like I heard, this was really shocking, at Purdue Cal, the students actually protested the food.
Really?
Yes. They were getting it from Chartwell, and they were asking for more local sources.
Wow.
I know, it really is. And we need to hear about this stuff that's going on in the schools. When you had, what you're doing with Green Drinks is wonderful, Kathy. I met a couple of students from Valpo there. But for this food day, I noticed that they're looking for campus coordinators.
Okay.
So any students or faculty who are interested in local food issues, I really heartily recommend that, trying to organize around campus.
Could people call you, or who would they contact?
Who would they contact? We don't really have a network in place yet. I would sort of field all calls to NERPC for now. I know PNC, the food service director there, he wanted to do a local foods dinner. I don't know if that will occur. We were trying to sort of find a way that all Purdue campuses could sponsor something, or work in collaboration with something like that. But it's kind of like who's around and who's willing to take it up to do the work and to start organizing. But we really need some kind of body here, Kathy. I want you to figure that out.
The pot is being stirred, as it were, but it still has to coalesce into some stakeholders. And
well, if anybody out there is listening and you happen to belong to the Indiana University Alumni Association, the Purdue University Alumni Association, the VU Alumni Association, perhaps this is your time to gather your muscle or have some conversations and see where you can jump in to help some of the local campuses. I mean, that's what alumni are supposed to do. And sort of get onto campus and see if you can't work with your alumni organization to help, instead of it always being the paid staff on, a university campus. I mean, I run a nonprofit, and basically that's what happens to people who run universities. Here's another project. Figure out where you're going to, fit that in. So maybe this isn't a time for alumni to really step up and get involved on their campus with these issues.
And I know the chef or food service director at Valpo U is real interested, and he's really willing to step up. So you'd have a willing collaborator with him.
Well, in the absence of having a place to point people toward, I don't want to leave them hanging. I would say if you don't have anybody else to contact right now, you can post a note for me on 219greenconnect.com, and I will connect you to whomever I have in my circle and try to get that going. I don't have a green program of my own, but it's just a place exactly for this purpose where people can connect. And if you happen to be on Facebook, it's just facebook.com 219greenconnect, so I can put you in touch with some people.
Okay, and I'll post about the actual
and Tracy
details.
Posting other links on the...
I have been all on our Facebook page.
Facebook page.
Kathy and I are going to be shifting that page. Well, I shouldn't say Kathy and I are going to do anything. Kathy's probably going to be shifting around the Facebook page, so that'll now be the Socially Speaking. But for right now, you can find it on the Traut page until we make that switch.
Sounds good. We're just all about getting the information out there. This is just something... We're obviously here today as volunteers, and this is just a subject that means a lot to us. I think, personally, what we put in our body, as you said, it's a spiritual and community experience as well, and it's got, regional and economic impact. So, on so many levels, I think people really need to embrace this idea if they haven't yet looked at it.
I also like the idea that you were talking about, Sandy, of this whole idea of, you grow the food and you bring it in, and this whole wonderful thing about sharing. Cooking and being in the kitchen and having, people over, and the way we can, socially connect. And it doesn't just have to be your family. It can be whatever family you create. I mean, I think that is such a unique opportunity to stand in the kitchen and create, whether it's with your friends or with your spouse or whomever. Let's see how many vegetables we can get, and let's see what we can make. I mean, let's face it, that's how some of the greatest minds in cooking do it. They just grab stuff and they go. You did, something in sesame oil and garlic and whatever. I bet it was fabulous.
Yeah, it's I wish I could say we were organizing sort of community potlucks. We tried a couple of times and it hasn't really gelled yet. My church they've organized like little meeting groups where they share food, which is a wonderful idea. And it's like our lives are so busy, but I mean, you know, and even for me, because I am kind of like the last person to be a foodie. I was never. I mean, I love to eat, so that's the start. But I was living in the city, and I was really just disconnected. I just loved going to restaurants, you know, and all of that. And now it's a whole different world, and we really do need ways to find out how to connect with community. You know, and that's what's been so lovely and really fulfilling, because Miller Beach is a wonderful community. There's such great people there, and it's almost like anything you want to do, you can, you know, throw it out there, and there'll be somebody to,
right, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's.
What are the hours of the market?
The market runs on the first and third Sundays from 11:30 to 3:30, and we're always looking for more vendors. And we actually expanded this year to include like flea markets, so to encourage reuse and recycling of stuff, especially kids' clothes and women's clothes. And we have, we're going to have a new farmer from Michigan at our market, Grainer Farms, which I'm really excited. We have a guy who is growing things aquaponically too, who started at the market. So, and it's a real friendly, very...
You had me at aquaponics. You got me there. Well, and just if I can give a shout out to a couple of other markets that I've seen, I think do a really good job. The Chesterton European Market is fairly large, and that happens, I believe, through
every Saturday
through maybe beginning of October. Check that out. Riverside Market in Michigan City is it's a nice one that I've picked up a couple of grass-fed beef and some, you know, basil plants and things like that. And then our own, could probably throw a rock and hit it, Valpo. Hopefully soon we'll have our, what's that court, or what's the name of our new Central Park Plaza? Will be completed soon. But right now you can still go outside the courtyard and
the courthouse.
Excuse me. I just want to be in a courtyard. It sounds good. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, and they've got a smallish gathering of local farmers, but yet really good stuff.
Really good stuff. Yeah, the farmers there really produce, you know. Andy Vasquez is from J&J Organic, and he sometimes gets it from the Amish, too. He's not, but Linda Ebert's always there. You know, she's a joy to talk to. She's so knowledgeable about everything. And there's a couple other farmers there. So it's small. They need support, though. They really do.
And one other shout out I'd like to give is it's Sawgrass Marketplace, which is not technically a farmer's market. It's a brick and mortar, you know, permanent structure. But they're up in Chesterton off of that South Calumet Business District. And there's a place there called Local Flavors Deli and Cafe. And Marilyn Bush, that is the owner, does her best to use as many local products as possible in the food.
And these are the kinds of places we shall be
we've got to supporting. So if you haven't done that this week, do one food. Try
something locally grown.
Yes, and see how good it tastes. And just, you know, if you're at a local restaurant, ask, do you have anything on special? Do you have anything that's grown local?
What is there anything that here is local, which is a great idea. Sandy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
I hope you will come back and join us again. And this is Tracy Traut.
And I'm Kathy Sipple, Socially Speaking.
Signing off. Everybody make it a great week.